post of us side by side, and someone's like, "Those guys look alike, but one of those guys is really old." And I'm like,
Which one?
Yeah, I'm like, that's not nice. I knew which one. I didn't need to ask. I knew who they were talking about.
I'm older than you, aren't I?
No, absolutely not.
Really?
Yeah. How old are you?
I'm 50.
Yeah, I'm 54.
Ow. You don't look a day over 49.
I don't look a day over 72. I look great.
You do look
72.
You look fantastic.
I think.
It's humor, got your health. Great.
That's I know. Here, we're going to say, we're taking a live Q&A tonight. Nicole Manor says hi to both of us.
Hello.
Do you know Jonathan Ortega? Do you know Jonathan?
I've heard the name. I think so.
He's CrossFit Media. He takes photos. Pretty good at it.
Jonathan.
He's got a great mustache.
Yeah, he does. That's
like
that is
great mustache.
It's solid.
Yeah. It's good.
Familiar names in here.
Yeah, let's see who else is in here. Kipping it. Do you know Kipping It Real?
Haven't met him. No, know of him.
He's great. Funny stuff. Lots of good people in the chat tonight. So
wonderful.
Here, Dan says it's the Woolly Wood Show. I'm not sure how I feel about that name. It makes me feel a little uncomfortable in my pants somehow. A little weird.
Yeah. We'll have to workshop that some more.
We will have to workshop it. Thanks for joining, dude. This is fun.
Yeah, I just want to give you a shout out right off the bat here. First of all, I just always enjoy my conversations with you, whether it's off the record or on the record. And I really appreciate what you're doing with your constantly varied conversations and the videos you're posting and the measured sort of reasonable tone that you take with things. I think you're really adding a lot of value to the community and providing a lot of good discussion points in a rational manner. And I appreciate that.
Oh, thanks, dude. That's nice. I was actually, I'll throw it back at you. I was thinking today, because I'm sure it's what we'll be talking about, but I've obviously had people messaging me about, the terrible events that happened last week. Mm-hmm. And I was relaying them back about how traumatic they were, like watching it live. And I said to them, I'm like, as everything was unfolding, I was texting Sean, right. And I'm not sure how I would have gotten through it without you and I texting back and forth. Like, it was so horrifying to watch live, but at a minimum for you and I to be able to communicate through that. And Joe too, I should give a shout out to Joe, who's the managing director of Morning Chalk Up, because he was part of that conversation for us. And, it was horrible for all of us, but when you're with friends, it doesn't make it less horrible, but you at a minimum, you at least have someone you can grasp onto, if that makes sense, So
yeah, it was good having you there, man. I think I told this. I just felt like I was reliving when I was at the Daytona 500 in 2001 for the first time in my career, was when Dale Earnhardt was killed. Obviously, different kind of thing, but the way that the information started sort of trickling out and this building sense of dread was exactly the same thing. And it was horrible.
Yeah, I remember that. We're both old enough to remember that. Most people watching probably aren't. No. But we both are. I feel like I've lived through a bunch of horrible moments like that in my life. And this one, it's weird. My daughter's home tonight. Meg came home from Montana. It's the first time I've seen her in 3 months, and I'm so happy. Like, both my girls under the same roof for the first time in months. And we were talking about it some, and I said to her, I'm like, I've probably cried more in the past 5 days than I've cried in the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, like, I didn't know Lazar at all. Like, I'd never met him, never talked to him, wasn't really on my radar. And, my heart breaks for his family. And so I'm not trying to make it less than it is. It's kind of the opposite. It's like, as I feel like I've come to know him through other people's stories, and he was the best of us, like of our community, like kind of held all those things that we love about CrossFit. And the more I've seen it, the more I've become heartbroken. And it's a really weird feeling to have such mourning for someone you've never met before. It's almost, just mourning for the community more. It's really an odd thing.
I mean, it's just, it feels like a family member, and it feels like as a result, the family is getting torn apart right now.
Yeah. And then you hear from everybody else, like all the, everyone else in the community is the same way. And that makes it even worse. It's like, and to some degree it makes it better. It's such a weird dynamic. Like, I don't mean to laugh about it. It's just so odd. I don't know how to handle it,
Yeah, I don't either. I just, it hits me at weird times. I was just doing some stuff around the house the other day, and I had to sort of organize my son's closet, and I started kind of like cleaning it out. And I had this thought hit me that, his family is going to have to do this with his stuff. And I had to kind of take a 20 and just sort of stop.
Right.
Because I got really sad. And I think right now it's just, and I said this on our show we did the other day with Chris Hinshaw, that I'm just mad right now. There's just a lot of anger that I'm trying to direct into making sure that things change the way that they need to change, that we all know they need to change.
Yeah. It's funny. Someone messaged me the other day. They're like, how are you so rational right now? It's exactly what they said to me. It was somebody you would know, and we can talk about that off air. I'm not going to throw names out here, but they were like, how are you staying so rational? And I'm like, when you're knee deep in grief, that's the only thing that's left for me. Like, there is rage. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's certainly that moment, that moment of anger you want to have. But when everything else is gone, all you can be is logical. That's it. And really try to look at life as it is and try to figure it out. And I think that's where I'm at today. It's just like trying to figure out what's next, like,
that's where we all are, I think.
Yeah. It's like, what are the ramifications going to be? Like, that's what I'm really trying to figure out. Cause it's so much, it's so huge at the games level, but it's so much even beyond that for all of us, there's the emotional damage that we all suffered watching it. There's the fallout that's going to hit the affiliates over time. As you Google the name CrossFit, and this is all you see right now. And, some affiliates leaving, some staying, and just the general, you can even see it in the comments here, just the general heartbreak of the members that don't really know how it could have possibly happened and don't know what to do next. And, we're kind of all in the same boat. It's just such a unique experience, I think.
Have you been back to your affiliate yet since it happened?
Yeah.
What was the vibe?
Well, it's probably a little different for me because I own it. So I'm not sure I always get the full picture of how people are feeling. And, let's be honest, like, the affiliate experience is different because most affiliates, and, I'm certainly not going to throw them onto the same bucket, but the average CrossFitter doesn't care about the games at all. So, like, it's not even on their radar, and that's, I don't know what the right number to throw on it is. For my gym, I can speak for Chagrin Falls CrossFit. It's probably 95% have no idea this even happened.
Yeah.
They just want to be fit and come in and work out with us and do their thing and go back around their life. So I think, the average person that's hitting gyms doesn't know, but it's the 5% that's invested that are just deeply crushed.
Yeah. I went this morning for the first time because I haven't really been in because getting back on to 100% because after my knee surgery, but I went this morning and it was business as usual.
Yep.
I talked about it with a friend of mine, a guy I've known for a while who I know is a fan of the games. We talked a little bit, but other than that, it was it. And I think that I didn't really want to get up at 4 a.m. to go to the gym, but I did just because I knew that I wanted to get back into it. And I think being around people that sense of community, it just helps.
Yeah. I wonder what the impact is going to be in the short term. Like, I'll give you a really, like a personal example. So I have a couple of bosses, but none of them, they don't know anything about CrossFit. Like this is such a common experience for all of us. I'm like, hey, I'm going to the CrossFit Games. I'm like, oh, you're competing? I'm like, yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. I'm fittest on earth. That's what I'm going to do. So they have no idea. They had no clue. And my boss messaged me Friday morning. And he was like, oh my God, what happened? Because he saw it on CNN or USA Today or something, and wanted to know. And so I think that's the impact that we'll see at the affiliates at a minimum in the short term are people that are, just trying to decide if they want to get in fit, and they Google CrossFit, and the first thing they find are 30 articles about a death within the CrossFit family. And I wonder if that, what that impact's going to look like long term. It's certainly going to be an obstacle for HQ to overcome. They've been fighting that battle for years anyway. And this is not, whether it makes it easier for them or not, bluntly, I don't give a shit. Like, it's on them. Yeah. So, they can figure that out. But for those of us that own affiliates, and you've got people that we want to get to join because we all know the life-changing power of the methodology and what it does for people. You and I alone, like, people our age shouldn't be fit. Like
Fitter at 50 than it was at 25. No
yeah,
doubt about it.
yeah, absolutely the same thing. And I bet everyone in the chat could have the exact same story. And so for me, that's the worry, is like, is it going to impact my ability to reach people that need what we know will save them? I don't know. Hopefully it's a short-term disadvantage for us that we're able to overcome over time. But time will tell. I don't know.
Who's Will T? He seems pleasant. I want to have him over for dinner.
Oh, I don't know. Let me see. I wasn't reading the comments yet. These guys are just like woke anti-racist. I don't even know what that means. I was joking with my daughter the other day that I get called woke so often. I'm like, what's the opposite of woke? is the opposite of woke like I don't even know what it is. What would it be? It would be like Capitol stormers. Like, is that the opposite? I don't know what it is.
Whatever.
I don't know. I've just been called woke so often. At this point, it's just become funny to me.
Exactly. Yeah, I keep thinking about like what happens now? Where do we go from here? And given everything that you see the athletes posting, I don't think there's any way the games continue without major changes. Because if things just remain the same, I do think there's enough momentum with the athletes for them to say, we're not doing this anymore. We're not competing. And then now it just, the open becomes a community thing. And maybe that's good for CrossFit because they don't have to spend money on it anymore. And that's fine. That gets it off their bills.
I mean, you've had the inside track for a long time, Sean. Like, I don't have any sense or idea of clearly how they put on the games, and particularly around the safety side as a part of that media. Do you have any insight as to what that normally looks like, or are you just simply covering it and the rest of us?
I've had a couple people who have been on the medical teams reach out to me. I know Lauren's had a few reach out to her, and they're willing to kind of talk about some things. I don't know how it particularly is organized. I've been so just knee deep in the broadcast side of things. I don't know about that. So yeah, I wouldn't be. What the questions that I have that I want to get answered are, how, when you hold an event in a city, so like Fort Worth, how much say does the city have over what needs to take place on an offsite event as far as safety precautions, and how much of that is on CrossFit? Who's in charge of staffing? Who's in charge of how's that dynamic work? And hopefully in the coming days, we're gonna have someone on our show who can answer that. So, but that's the main question I have as far as how it's organized. But I've never been privy to any of those direct conversations.
I don't have an answer for that. I can tell you, I know from pretty decent conversations with people that most cities, wherever you put on an event, they're going to require a safety plan. So Fort Worth would very, very likely have an identical process, meaning you're saying, hey, we're going to put on an athletic competition. They will ask for your safety plan. You have to present it, and they simply approve it. But that doesn't make it safe, if that makes sense.
Yeah, agreed. Like, what are the minimum standards that that sort of govern these decisions? It's
a liability decision for them,
right?
I mean, it's like they don't want the city to get sued, and so they just want to make sure they signed off on something that at a minimum has the appearance of safety. Whether it is safe or not, it's a different discussion. So I agree with you. I want to see what those are. I know Joe and his team have requested all that. Joe's, for people watching, Joe's with Morning Chalk Up. You guys know Joe, probably managing director. And so they've been asking for all those records. And so I think we'll find it pretty soon.
I think stuff's going to start trickling out, especially, I mean, I can just speak from our experience of people that are reaching out to us with things they want to say. I was like, I want to talk to them, but I don't know what the future holds. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, is that if, I think the athletes need to see different people in charge of this in order for them to, because I think the trust is gone now. And I think Brent Fikowski more or less said that in the post that he made, where he laid out sort of the blow by blow of, this is what we've tried to do, and these are the responses that we got leading up to this event. And I don't know how, if you don't make changes as far as who's running what and who's involved and how these things are planned, I don't know how that trust returns, if it can be rebuilt. So at the end of the day, I keep coming to the same spot, that if some semblance of the sport and a season are going to continue, it's probably going to be run by different people that are running it now.
Right. Yeah, possibly. I
could be wrong, but that's the way it feels.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible. I haven't spent any time thinking about what kind of those long-term people changes will be. I spent more of my time looking back on how did we not recognize the signs that this could possibly happen as one, and and secondly, like hearing the athlete stories, because I had heard a lot of those before, and trying to figure out why weren't those amplified. I mean, that's just like hindsight's 2020, so there's no blame there. I am curious for you though, Sean. I saw your show the other day with Chris Henshaw, which by the way was terrific. So thank you for doing that. I got to be honest, like I watched it and I was horrified. You know what I mean? I don't know how you felt interviewing him, but I love Chris. Like he's literally one of the smartest people I've ever met. We had him on the show a couple of years ago. And when I talked to him then, I thought, Jesus Christ, this guy's so much smarter than me. I can't even talk to him. And then I'm watching him on your show again, thinking, man, I feel like an idiot, like listening to everything he knows. But as I'm listening to him and he was breaking down, what happens within the human body as you're doing these competitions, I'm like, man, like, how did we not catch this? We as a community, like no one to blame, like just how was no one shouting to the hills? Did you have that same feeling as you were interviewing him, or was that just me?
I think the one that I always go back to is the one that happened in 2017, where Will Powell, the Masters athlete in the open water swim, nearly drowned and had to be rescued by a fellow competitor who heard him shouting for help. And we all lauded that as such a great moment of the community. Look what this guy did. He didn't, he turned around and helped Will out, and it was celebrated on the broadcast and all that stuff. Now that right there should have been an alarm. Is like, does something maybe need to change here on how we're doing this? And there's been other instances in the past where I think that's the frustration that comes through. And I know in Pat Vellner's posted, or Pat had the interview on Be Friendly Fitness with that bite that everyone's seen about, we just get told we're patted on the head and told everything's okay. And then in Brent's post is that these issues and these complaints about safety have been brought up for the last 10 plus years. And more often than not, they seem to be met with kind of, you guys are just sort of being hysterical. We don't, let's calm down here. This isn't a big deal. Right. And unfortunately, in every other sport, for there to be major changes in safety protocols, it's usually something like this that happens. I'll go back to Dale Earnhardt, 2001. What happened after that? They mandated use of the Hans device, the head and neck restraint system that may have been able to save him had he been using it in that crash of the 500. They started using safer barriers. There was all kinds of things that came into play as far as safety precautions go. When Corey Stringer died in Minnesota Vikings training camp, I think also in 2001, the NFL got sued by his widow. And as a result, all these safety precautions and safety mandates came out about how you have to conduct training camp, what personnel need to be on site, how much shade, all that stuff. There was even a device that someone came up with. And I remember doing a story on it in Jacksonville because the Jaguars were using it for their offensive linemen, called a thermocore pill. And it was a little capsule these guys the bigger guys would take, that had like a radio transmitter and a thermometer. And the trainers could go up to them with a device and read their core temperature so they could head off any sort of problems in the summer. I mean, the recent death of the hockey player, and I can't remember his name, is in the minor leagues, who got a freak accident, got his throat slashed by a skate, died, which we've seen someone survive, I think 36 years ago when Clint Malarchuk had his jugular sliced. Like all of a sudden everyone's mandating throat guards now.
Right.
And unfortunately, I just hope now that when people say, hey, we have safety concerns, that they're taken seriously and there's some sort of common ground we can find here. Because I don't think anyone's saying we shouldn't do anything hard, we shouldn't do anything challenging, but we shouldn't do such stuff that's dangerous or reckless.
How many people work on the games team? Do you know offhand?
I really don't know. I
don't guess.
I don't know anymore.
Did you ever work there? What the hell, man?
Yeah, no. I worked at the media department, man. I could tell you all about that, but I don't.
You've been gone for like 6 months. How do you not know? What the hell? Jesus Christ.
Check out, right? What good am I?
Well, I only ask because I I think there are a lot of people just jumping to conclusions that, you know, if there was something broken in the system, it has to be Dave's fault. And I don't buy into
I don't know if
that.
it is or not. Yeah, I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, I think it's completely not fair. You got dozens of people on this game team, and I think that's part of. I think it's easy. I'll give you just a human personal example. Like you and I were watching this live, and I was taking notes as it was going down, and I took a lot of notes around what I was perceiving as bad safety. I wasn't doing it because I was particularly worried for the athletes. You and I were going to do a debrief of the show, and I was just looking for like talking points.
Yeah.
Right. And so like I'm watching it going, oh man, these athletes are swimming 100 yards off course and there's only, you know, 4 people on paddleboards. That seems kind of dangerous, but I didn't really think about it.
Yeah.
You know, like in a nervous term, because these guys are superheroes, man. Like, you know, all of them, at least to me. And so I wasn't worried about it necessarily until it actually happened. And then I was losing my mind. And my point to all that is, you know, there's so many people that work on that games team. I don't have any idea who makes those decisions for, you know, hiring the safety people or the way the workouts are programmed or, you know, the order in which things happen, you know? And so it's going to take us time, you know, take time for everybody to figure all that stuff out. So I just don't think it's fair for people to blame Dave or congratulate him or whatever, you know, tell him it's not your fault or it is your fault. You know, but I think it's okay that we're asking the questions. I just want to figure out, you know, how do we get past it, make sure it never happens again. That's the key for all of us. And whatever the ramifications are, that's on HQ, not on us. I just, you know, all I know is, you know, you and I were watching that event together and I just wanted to go throw up. I mean, that was it.
I had a real big, I mean, I had a pit in my stomach and I was like, this is bad. This is really, really bad. And you know, Tommy and Lauren were there at the facility and they were texting me stuff and I just kept going, oh no, this can't be happening. And I think everybody had the same reaction to that. And yeah, it is like so again, where do we go from here and what needs to happen? And I do agree with the sentiment that you can't automatically just point the finger at Dave. Now he is an easy target because he's constantly putting himself out there. He sort of made himself the de facto face of the games. But yeah, there's still so much that we need to uncover. But I think immediately, right off the bat, we don't need to be doing open water swims. And I know I've seen some people say, well, hey, open water swims aren't necessarily dangerous and things like that. And I get that. That's fine. And I think if you have the right safety protocols in place, then okay. But why can't we just put these guys in a pool? Why can't we put the athletes in a pool? And there's a financial component to that because I know you need to rent a facility and all that. Fine. But do we really need open water swimming at the games? Is that something that we've got to have? So that needs to be looked at. And I think, too, another thing that needs to happen, and I didn't know this was the case until someone pointed it out, is that when games athletes show up on site, they don't have to pass a physical. There's no sort of, you're cleared to compete. I think that could be just something that we can do right off the bat as well. And I think moving forward too, that however this shakes out and however, if let's assume that the sport is going to survive, the games are going to survive, there's going to be a season. The PFAA or a representative of that organization has to be constantly involved in conversations about how events are being put together.
Right.
So they can head off any sort of issues that might come up. You can have them sign an NDA so they're not releasing details to athletes and stuff like that. But someone from that organization has got to be in the room, I think, now. Yeah,
I look at it. I don't have much of an opinion on whether we should or shouldn't have open water swim. My opinion is I want to see everybody finish healthy and happy. And I would be lying to say I have enough experience to tell you if it's safe or it isn't safe. I've quickly become an internet expert like the rest of us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like when COVID hit, everybody became a Google MD. It's kind of the same thing with this. I got this thing, just like everybody else in the chat. I quickly got in and started Googling triathlons to see if it's safe or it isn't safe.
I think 8 people have died in triathlons this year alone.
Yeah, it's a big number.
I'll look that up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a small number. But I'm personally not going to take a position on it. I fully agree, though, that what I would really like to see from it is a really good dialogue between the PFAA and CrossFit. Not looking to give the PFAA, a ridiculous amount of power over CrossFit. I would just like to see a productive dialogue where the athletes feel heard,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel safe and they feel like they're getting everything they need. And I want to feel like CrossFit feels like they continue to put on the sport that they want to put on, that we all love, which is unknown and unknowable and exciting and finding the fittest on earth. I think all those things are important. And I believe that CrossFit also, I mean, you could see it on their faces. You can, every time I see any of them online right now, it's like they're as devastated as we are. So I don't think there's one of them that doesn't want that at this point. So I think if we can find a way to bring those together and heal this, kind of breach of trust and create something that's safe and fun and exciting and still finds the fittest on earth, it's a win for everybody. But it's certainly going to take a breakdown of conversation between the two, because I don't think the athletes are incorrect when they say they've come to CrossFit in the past and CrossFit has, kind of put their hands up and said, hey, we'll get to it. Don't, trust us. Don't worry. And they're not having good communication. I mean, those of us that have tried to work with CrossFit personally have experienced that. So I would be shocked if it were any different for the athletes. So I think if they can find that fix in communication, we'll never get past it, but we can repair that and make this something that's safe and right for everyone moving forward.
But do you get the sense, given everything that the athletes are saying, that without major changes, that trust can even be repaired? Because I feel like it's kind of beyond saving right now.
I think I understand what you're saying. I think currently it can't be, but I think we've got to put a little distance between it.
Sure.
Like the knee-jerk reaction and the group think of everyone coming together. And again, I'm not saying any of these athletes are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I am pro athlete. If you're going to put me on the side of this argument, it's going to be on the side of the athletes. But I want to recognize both sides. And I think that if you give the athletes a little time and you give CrossFit some time to really come together and have productive dialogue, I think they can get past it. I think if you ask them to do it tomorrow, you have zero chance. It's kind of the same, like think back to what happened, as soon as this went down, all the athletes now are saying it was kind of an insincere moment, or we'll just call it a difficult moment, where the games team is telling the athletes, hey, we're going to continue on. What do you guys want to do? Mm-hmm. And a bunch of them are pissed off. And over the course of the weekend, a lot of them continue to drop out, right? That's understandable. They're wrecked. This was their friend, someone that they loved, is someone that we all loved. And I think that's completely understandable. But if you give them a little time, that part's not going to go away. Like the humanity part, their love for Lazar, love for his family, the desire to want to have a safe competition, none of that's going to go away. But if you give it a little time, you can then at least have a more productive dialogue, because what you will take away is the huge emotional response that we're all feeling right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel it right now. Like even today, I forget what I was watching, but I was watching something on YouTube, and there were like a couple of brothers or sisters or something, but they were siblings, and I got teary-eyed because I started thinking of, Lazar and his brother. Yeah. Like my daughter came home today, and they're 2 years apart, and I've thought of them all week long because they're my entire world, and I can't imagine being apart from one of them. You need some time to be able to separate that love and desire for happiness and everything that comes with it from what the sport is. And so I think with a little time, I think we can get there, but it's going to take a little time.
Yeah. And I agree that you never want to engage in major life decisions when you're emotional or angry or but I just feel that unless there are different people that are put in charge of this, that the athletes are going to have no interest in even beginning a dialogue. And if everything were great up to this point, and this was an outlier situation where people felt that for whatever reason, safety precautions were ignored, or they weren't where they needed to be or whatever, then maybe, but because this has been an ongoing thing for so long, I don't know how the athletes come back to the table unless they are presented with some major changes right off the bat. And this also goes back to, and I think you were talking to this, I think with Nikki the other night, about, does CrossFit even want to run the sport anymore? Do they even
Yeah, I don't
want
know.
to do this anymore? Because I don't think it's a huge cost for them. So this might be an opportunity for them to say, yeah, look, we're not going to do this anymore. We're out. Like, we're just going to run our affiliates and that's it.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I thought about that today. Like, because I Googled CrossFit and there were, not shockingly, dozens of news articles around what had happened here.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered to myself, just as I was looking at it, will CrossFit decide to tap out of the sport and hand it off to a Live and Loud or someone else and let them continue on, because it might risk affiliates. And at the end of the day, like, the true North Star for CrossFit is how do we grow affiliates?
Right.
And if the games is impacting their ability to grow affiliates, it's a huge risk, far bigger than anything that could happen at the games. I mean, I'm not trying to discount a death by any stretch of the imagination, but like, the entire organization goes under at that point if there's no affiliate growth.
Right.
And so I wonder a little bit if that's a potential ramification. My gut tells me no. There's only because there's so much money on the table that comes with it. And at the end of the day, it's still a corporation that is looking to make money. As heartless as that is, it's just the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So my gut tells me they won't, but I don't think it's off the table.
They won't what? Get rid of the games?
Yeah, I don't think it's off the table, but I think, there's also on the table that someone could come in and throw an offer at them and say, we'll take it off your hands.
I've always thought that, and this is a debate too that people always have, is should sport and the methodology be separated? And I just think CrossFit should license out the season to someone who wants to run it. So CrossFit would find a production company who wants to call it the qualification process between open and games. Right. And that could be 5 or 6 live events. It could be whatever, or that take place over a certain amount of months. So they have kind of quote unquote a season that the open is the starting part. So CrossFit can run the open. They get all the proceeds from that. It's a moneymaker for them. That sort of sets the table for whatever the season is. This company comes in or group of people that want to run this, pay CrossFit a fixed fee, a licensing fee. All CrossFit has to do is now pocket that, and they can have some sort of involvement in how, I guess, the competition is run and things are represented, just so they make that sort of their name is on it and it's being represented the way they want. And then let this production company run the events, monetize them, take ticket sales, take the revenue from streaming, and let them go. And then CrossFit or whoever can run the games.
Yeah,
I like that has always just sort of made sense to me. But it's easier. It's much easier said than done. Now I do know that there are people out there. If you got them in a room, they would figure out how to make this happen. It might take a little bit, but I know the right people are out there to do this.
Our boy Jonathan came in the comments. Greg said today he tried to sell it but couldn't find anybody to take it. I mean, that would have been 4+ years ago, but I'm not sure I doubt that, to be honest. Like, only because the games got preempted on ESPN this weekend for cornhole. So, you know what I mean? It's like
Ocho. Well, look, in their defense, you're going up against the Olympics, and I think even was it Saturday or Sunday went up against the gold medal basketball game that had the most viewers of a gold medal game since 1996. So that's a losing battle.
They should have gone up against that awesome breakdancer. Did you see that? The Australian breakdancer? She was amazing.
I didn't see that. I watched maybe 10 minutes of the Olympics this year.
The 3 best moments in the Olympics this year, and then we'll get back to CrossFit, were the Australian breakdancer who didn't know how to dance. Love her. She was my favorite. The guy from Turkey who just went out there and raw dogged it with a handgun. Yeah. Did you see him? The glasses and a handgun.
Yep.
And beat every American on the planet. I'm still embarrassed as hell. I mean, you can't tell me there's someone in Mississippi and Alabama that couldn't outshoot that guy, but okay. And then the third one was the pole vaulter with the huge stick. Like, God bless that guy. Man, what a great Olympics it's been. It's been amazing.
Give that guy a gold medal, if you know what I mean. Like,
I know. Like, I know where he's going to hang it. I can tell you that. Oh my God, it's like really impressive. Anyway, we'll get back on topic. But it's so I don't know if they can sell it. I think that's a good point. Like, whether they can or can't, who knows? But
I want to know who CrossFat is in the chat, because I think I probably know this person given some of the comments that he or she.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen the comments, but I guess
there's some stuff that.
Yeah,
I've said that before. I've seen that name show up. I was like, this person probably I worked with.
Here's a really good comment that came in. I'd be curious on your, because I feel this way, but I'd be curious on your insight. So Paul says, I think a lot of the sadness people are feeling is a realization that they have aligned with an organization that doesn't exactly know what it's doing.
I thought a lot about this today. It's funny that you bring this up because I was trying to figure out why you use the term loss of innocence. And I think that hits the nail on the head. And it's almost, and I hope people will see where I'm going with this, because I'm not trying to be flippant or anything like that, but it's almost like when you find out your parents aren't perfect and they're flawed and they've done some pretty bad shit, in their lifetime. And that realization that you have and it can be kind of jarring.
Right.
And I sort of liken it to this. And I think most people we're all advocates for this methodology and for this community. I believe wholeheartedly in it. I will always be a part of it. I will always do constantly varied functional movements performed at high intensity. I think it's the best way to get fit. It has done wonders for me. And I'll always try to be part of an affiliate, work out with people. And when that organization that you have, been out there carrying the flag for and advocating for, when they let you down like this, it's hard. It's really hard to stomach. And I think there's just this loss of innocence that's going on right now. I can't put it any better than you have, but that's sort of the sense that I'm getting from people is that, and everyone has a story about how great CrossFit has been for them and how it's, helped them lead better lives and how it's connected them to the community that has made a difference and how it's, shown them that they can be fit and hang out with their kids at 50s and 60s and still do things that they didn't think they'd be able to do at that age. Or, I remember way back, I coached a woman 12 years ago who came into CrossFit so scared that she had no idea what she was doing. And then a month later, she was so happy that she came in because she could finally bend down to get into her cupboards. That's the kind of stuff. But, and we all believe in that, but now all of a sudden there's this just gigantic black eye.
Right.
And I don't think people are having an easy time coming to terms with that.
I was hoping you were in the story with, and now that woman is my wife.
Yeah.
Love
you, Agnes.
Yeah. On Thursday when all this was happening, it was my birthday. And so my mom and my dad were texting me. Yeah, it was a shitty birthday. And, but my mom and my dad were texting me, and my dad texted me and said, "Hey, your mom told me what happened. So sorry. I'm on my way to the gym." And I thought then, because he was going to an affiliate, he goes to an affiliate. He's 80 years, he'll be 80 years old this November. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself then, I have this deep, deep love for CrossFit because it's what it's done for me. And for my family, it's literally saved my dad's life. Literally saved it. I'm not making that a light statement. He would not be here if it weren't for CrossFit. And I think a lot of us feel that way, that it's something that we just have this deep love and passion for. And when something like this happens, we can't even wrap our brain around it. I didn't go to the games because I didn't feel aligned with what HQ is doing right now. Mm-hmm. And, but that doesn't take away my love for the methodology and what we do on a day in, day out basis. And I think most people feel that way,
Yeah.
And so I'm praying that we find us a way as a community to get to the bottom of this and get past it. Mm-hmm. Let me rephrase that. I don't want to get past it. I don't ever want to forget it, ever. I want us to all remember it. I want it to be deeply seared into our souls of how we felt the day we saw this happen, so it never happens again. But I want us to get back to where we are as a community, that at the end of the day, we're all about saving people's lives, mm-hmm. health and happiness, and being the best versions of ourselves. And I firmly believe that the games is the best expression of that. And so I want to see the games be successful. And so we've got to figure out how to make this a great experience for the athletes and for the games team and for the fans, and make it safe, or as safe as you can, and move on and remember this day and never let it happen again. That would be my hope. That would be the ideal scenario.
Agreed. And it's hard because, anytime something like this happens on a national stage, and the only thing I can kind of relate the aftermath of this to is it's the same feeling I had. I've said this multiple times. when I was working in the sports department in Jacksonville, Florida in 2001 after 9/11, and everything stopped. Sports stopped. No one cared. No one cared about, Florida, Tennessee. No one cared who the Jaguars were playing. No one cared about the NFL. No one cared about baseball. It all just seemed just of zero importance, which it was at the time. Yeah. And I just remember sitting there one day where, we would go into work and we would go, we just hang out just to be there, just to help. But we're not doing anything as a sports department. And I remember saying, like, are we ever going to be able to, is this ever going to matter again? And that's kind of what I feel right now. Is like, I want to get back to being able to have fun and care about the sport and not have this just constant thing just dwelling over us that is just making people angry, sad, and upset. And I agree with you. We have to get to a point where we can move on and get back to some sense of normalcy, but we should never forget about this.
Yeah.
Ever.
Here, someone in the comments with a really important statement.
No, Lions over Rams. I'll take that.
Yeah, Lions over Rams. I want to make sure you got that one. Lions over Rams.
That wasn't a pass interference call in the divisional playoff, because thanks for blowing that lead against San Francisco, by the way. I was so happy, and then you guys went full Lions.
Yeah, the Browns fan in me just could not resist making sure they got posted.
You guys are going to be good. You're going to be good this year.
Yeah, that was important. I do think, here's an interesting statement, and I think this is relevant. Everyone wants to point a finger. We have opinions, anger, frustration. We don't want to get anything solved, arguing and blaming. I agree with that. I hate the current climate where there's a lot of people yelling.
I agree.
But I do think we all have to recognize that, and I think most people do recognize this, honestly, that something really horrific happened, and we need to take a moment and figure out why. And that is going to take some arguing. It is.
Yeah, and people are pissed too. Like, I'm pissed.
Yeah.
I'm effing fed up. Like, I just am this has been simmering for a while, and this just, cannonballed me over the edge. And when you have that right now, the easiest place to let that out is on social media.
Right.
And it's directing it at people like Games account and Don Fall and Dave and all that stuff. So I understand why people do it. I got a message from someone that I used to work with at CrossFit who was on the support team, who used to have to read a lot of like the anonymous emails that were sent in. And she said, can you just please tell people that when they send those emails, they're not going directly to the people you want them to go. They're going to people who have nothing to do with the decisions that you're complaining about. Right. And they got to read them and they got to sift through them. And it's not fun. So I understand that there's a lot of anger that people are looking to get out.
So what's been simmering? That's
just the frustration with, sort of, I don't know. I guess I would call it I think I mentioned this with Hinshaw. I'm trying to find the right way to phrase this. Their way of just sort of not listening to people who kind of might know more than them, and just shutting those people out of the conversation and saying, no, we got this. We're okay. We don't need your help. And I don't understand it. And it's not just this instance. It goes in a lot of other areas of the company.
Yeah, we've heard that for years. I mean, the interesting thing is, and I think we all look back on this, hindsight's 2020. I don't know how you and your team feel. Mine's a one-man team. Yeah. Or, two, if you get throw Nikki into the group. I look back on it. I'm like, man, I wish I had advocated more for the PFAA, because I've had moments like, I've been friendly with them for a while, and I've done some work for them, or listen to what they're working on. And I've heard what you're talking about. What simmering has come up to me before. And it's one of those things, like when you're creating content and trying to get things out to the masses, you want to get things out that people want to hear, right? Like that's kind of the point. Like you need engagement, and you want to make sure it's something that's interesting. Like it's kind of simple. And even though I'm listening to them going, yeah, I know you're not being heard, but no one cares at the time. Like I didn't cover it. And now in hindsight, I'm like, God damn it. Like, well, why did I not spend more time on this?
Well, I think to that, I've had Talking Elite Fitness has had Brent on a couple times, multiple talking about this kind of stuff. And I've talked about this stuff. I guess you never think it's going to be something this horrible. No one thought it was going to, like, this was going to happen. Nobody. Injury, sure. Someone tripping on something, sure, but not this.
Including the games team. It should be
And
fair to say that. Like,
team, 100%.
yeah.
And and I think Vindicate had a comment in here. It was about, if the athletes have felt this way for so long, why didn't they just say that well, what was their alternative? I mean, unless some of them have full-time jobs, but the ones who really make a living on this, what were they supposed to do? And I think at the time, back in the day, there were so many people trying to get into the sport that they'd say, fine, you don't have to. We'll just get this next crew. Now, I think that has changed now because we have more or less found a consistent group of people who are at the top of the sport.
Right.
That wasn't the case 10 years ago. Like that, there was new people kind of popping up all the time. That field is more or less established now, but there wasn't like there was an alternative for them. And I think a lot of people stayed in it because maybe they did believe that things were going to get better and things would change. But it's a good question.
Here's an interesting question. I'd be curious. I mean, because how long have you been covering the games? 15 years, 10 years?
2012 was my first year I actually was there.
Oh, man, you're famous. I didn't realize how famous you are. So the question in the comments is there a culture of toxic toughness, though, which I think is, if I'm reading through the subtext, and everybody can keep me honest here, which is like, I've kind of viewed this over the years. The games get tougher and tougher and tougher and tougher. And as it gets tougher, it's like, hey, you got to suck it up, buddy. Like, quit complaining, just do the workout. Do you, as someone who's seen these workouts for over a decade, and you've watched them be rolled out and you've been a part of the media coverage, like, is that your sense, or do you have a different feeling about it?
I mean, I think there is, I don't know if I would phrase it that way, but I think there is sort of this feeling that, hey, just suck it up and go. And that's kind of endemic in our community. I mean, that's a lot of people at gyms, that's sort of in our DNA as CrossFitters. And I think there is a little bit of, I think there is some of that for sure. It's like, hey, it's just do it. It's okay. So I don't care if it's hot, get out there. You got to compete. Yeah. And I don't think the athletes are necessarily saying, we don't want to do anything tough. We want everything to be easy and 70 degrees room temperature and, right. All this. They're not saying that. They're just saying, let's just be smart about this. And, even Brent said it. It's not that we didn't want to be outside in Texas. We just wanted to know how long and for how many events so we could properly acclimate. That's it. We weren't saying we didn't want to do it. Just let us know that the time frame is.
Right.
So I think that there has been a sense, especially early on. It's like, if you go back and watch some of those old games videos, it was just get out there and do it. I mean, there's stuff that they did in early events that would never fly today. Just you go back to 2010, they were doing push-ups on a black floor. They've been out in the sun every day. There was there's no rules on where you had to keep your barbell. You kind of had a lane, but there weren't lines to keep people from running into each other. I mean, it was a free-for-all out there. And go back to when Rich falls off the rope. There's no crash pad under there. It's a miracle he didn't break both his legs. Yeah. And that was just kind of the attitude. It's like, get out there and do it. And
it's interesting.
Sport, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I started CrossFit in 2011, and I vividly remember my early workouts. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't even nowhere near the specimen I am today, Sean.
No, I know that.
But I was crazy out of shape. And I remember my coach like changing my kettlebell mid-workout because he didn't think I was working hard enough. I remember coaches yelling at me, and like, if you weren't close to vomiting, you weren't working hard enough. That was the mindset in 2011. And now when you set foot in an affiliate, or at least you Google CrossFit, it says CrossFit, fitness that sticks, or CrossFit is for everybody. Like, it has all this inclusive language, but the games have continued to get harder.
Yeah, they have.
And so that you've got, my point is, and neither of those are a complaint for the record. It's just I'm pointing out that you have two different dynamics within CrossFit. You have the affiliate model coming down from HQ saying, hey, this is for everybody. You can do this, buddy. You got it. Right. Yeah. And then you have the games model that's like, suck it up, wuss, work harder, and granted, they're the best of the best, but it is two different messages. And it's really interesting to me how that's happened over the years. So the games continues to, continue with the forging elite fitness and harder. And the affiliate from the same company, same people are, given the viewpoint that it should be, works for everyone.
Yeah. And I remember it's not a famous quote, but I remember a quote from Dave. I can't remember when, and I don't remember to whom he said it, but it was, my job is not to showcase the athletes, it's to test them.
Mhm.
And he is right. Like, this should be a test. It should be hard. Not everybody should be finishing every workout. People should be getting capped. You want to make this tough. It needs to be a challenge, but that doesn't mean it needs to be reckless and unsafe.
Yeah.
And I think the athletes are totally fine with, yeah, we want to do tough ththings. Yeah, it needs to be a challenge to us, but let's just make sure the ropes aren't hanging on the floor. Let's just make sure we're not doing back squats on a wet platform. Like simple things like that, I think everybody can agree that, yeah, that makes sense. It's like what it was the alpaca, the event, was it 2022? They first rolled that out, and they didn't do it. They didn't do the rope climbs because they just said the rope is too wet. Can't do it.
Right.
And so they modify the workout. Okay. Stuff like that. I don't think anyone's saying that I don't want to sweat. I don't want my heart rate over 160 beats per minute. I want to make sure that the room temperature is this. Like, that's not what we're talking about. It's just like common sense things that we can do to make this safer. And to go back to Brent's post, when they seem to bring things like this up, the feeling, I don't know, because I haven't been on the other end of those responses, but it seems, given by what they are saying, that they feel like they're just being dismissed.
Yeah. I mean, we both worked with CrossFit in obviously a much bigger capacity than I ever have, but I've certainly had my moments of interacting with HQ, and it has always felt to me like the company was very fractured and siloed. I mean, I'm deeply ingrained in corporate culture within the business that I run, and CrossFit has felt not much different than that, just smaller and more people that are tightly grasping their corners of power, if that makes sense. And not to say that has necessarily impacted this, but that caused this to happen. It's just to point out a symptom of a company that it makes a lot of sense when you hear people saying, well, I'm giving a suggestion and I'm getting a lot of pushback. If you have people that are trying to hold on to their power and their little fiefdoms and they want to be the decision maker and not to be told what to do, makes a lot of sense, And again, we don't know who those people are, like the games team is far bigger than Dave. Right. There's a lot of people involved. So that's where the investigation with all this, we'll figure that out over time. But, so I fully believe the athletes, fully believe them when they say, hey, we've brought issues and have been ignored. But I also believe that the people that work within CrossFit are well-intentioned people.
There are a lot of them over there for sure.
Yeah. I don't think there's anyone there thinking, all right, I want to do something dangerous and reckless. No one thinks that. I just think we need to be able to look at the situation and figure out what happened, and whatever accountability needs to happen will happen. And we need to let that happen. But, hopefully as we get past that, then we can figure out, how do you break down the walls of the little fiefdoms and power struggles and get to what we really want, which is good collaborative approach to making the games what we want them to be. And it doesn't mean making them easier. It just means, making sure everyone feels like, all right, we're on board to make this safe and fun and exciting and find the fittest on earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know what the solution to that is. I mean, it's other than just starting from scratch, but I don't think that's a realistic possibility right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of solutions. Ultimately, it's going to come down to Don fixing the culture. This is a culture problem. I'm fully convinced of that. I mean, especially when you talk about poor communication, that's a culture issue.
Can I just jump in really quick? Because do you think that part of it is, and you had him on your show when he said this, like when they said that they were going to take a significant amount of money out of sport?
Yep.
Do you feel maybe that there's a sense where it's like games is running itself? I don't need to worry about it. It's a drain on us. I'm going to focus on this.
Right.
And that maybe because we care a lot about the sport and what's going on, that maybe that stuff has been allowed to happen because they just don't care what's going on over there. It just doesn't really matter to them as long as the bottom line is what the bottom line is. I may have done a horrible job of asking that question, but I hope you can see the point.
Yeah, you're a terrible interviewer, Sean. I will say I absolutely hate that comment has been used on so many posts, because it's not out of context, but a little is. Like when Don was talking to us about taking money out of sport, it was out of a much bigger context of cutting expenses out of the business. And I'd actually given him a compliment. Like, as someone who runs a corporate business, I'm like, you guys have done a really nice job of skinnying your expenses and without disrupting the business too much, And so he was making a point that, hey, we're going to do the same on the game side, which is we're going to cut unnecessary expenses and still make it a great experience. And he literally said that in the same interview. We're going to make it a great experience for athletes. So, now there's a lot of space between those two comments where you can infer what he meant. At the time that I was interviewing him, I did not believe that meant, all right, we're going to cut safety measures, right? Like, that wasn't even a random thought in my mind. And I don't know if they did or didn't. Like, that's part of what this internal or this external investigation will have to tell us, because we don't know. I don't want to defend Don or attack Don for that. I don't know. I do know that, if you just keep it as simple and as analytical as you can. If I went to you, Sean, and said, all right, I'm going to cut your expenses by X, whatever X is, then you have two choices. You can either adjust how you're running the business to what your new expense line is, or you can just keep spending willy-nilly and start bouncing checks.
Yeah. Right? And I know in areas where there were cuts made, and, and that's fine. But I just wonder if it's an area of the business that's not top of line for them, because it's just been running by itself, kind of humming along, doing its thing for so long. And they're more focused on what you were talking about earlier, affiliate growth, affiliate retention, and growing the lifeblood of their business. That this sort of culture that you're talking about has been able to fester and grow, because it just doesn't have a bearing on what really matters to them.
For the question for me, when I was looking at this on Thursday, and again, I'm not, I don't know what they did from cutting the costs of the business, but I was taking notes with the intention of like, hey, I'm just going to critique how this went down, the good and the bad. And my initial notes were, all right, first of all, the coverage of this is shitty. They had a camera on a bicycle that looked like it was a GoPro. They had a single drone camera that looked like it was a GoPro. They were both terrible. I did not see enough safety protocols in the water, but at the time I wrote it off as because the coverage is so shitty, I just can't see who's actually there. I just assumed there would be more people there, Mm-hmm. So, in hindsight, it has a real appearance that you can call it a cut to safety measures. There certainly were not enough. I mean, that someone died, so you cannot deny there were not enough, but that aside, I don't know what those cuts were compared to previous years. I know I've watched previous years, and I've seen a lot more people in the water and a lot more boats and jet skis and paddle boarders and everything else. All of this will come out in the third-party investigation. All I know is what my eyes told me. What I know right now, back to your question of, them cutting, taking significant costs out of the games. What we don't know is when they took that money out, who's in charge then of directing the funds? So I'll keep it as simple as possible. Whatever the dollar amount is, if Don says, all right, last year your budget was $1 million and this year it's $500,000. Well, whoever's in charge of spending that money has to make the decisions at that point. Don's role in this is to give you the money.
Right.
It's the person, doing everything, or the people doing everything else that have to figure out how to spend the money and how to allocate it and decide, is it going to safety? Is it going to apparel, to whatever, and that's all the stuff we don't know. That's why it's way too early to be pointing fingers at anyone, and why I absolutely don't want anyone blaming Dave or Don or anyone else on the games team, because we just don't know what we don't know.
Well, and that's why to me, I really just want to know, and I said this, I think an hour ago, how the local government, how the Fort Worth government, what role they play in this. Not that lets anybody off the hook, but it maybe just shows you sort of how the genesis of this whole thing. If they said, hey, you know, if you're going to run this event here, these are our minimum safety requirements. And if CrossFit met those, then okay. But it still, to me, goes back to the fact that you should take a real hard look at it and say, okay, even though we met the minimum requirements, is this enough?
Right.
And that's what I'm just having. That's where I'm trying to figure out and sort through, like how'd that all work? And I was hoping during that press conference that someone would have asked that when Don and Dave came out. It's like,
yeah.
And they didn't. I get it, because there were local reporters there who probably just like showed up on the scene. They don't know the history. They don't know anything. They were just trying to figure out what happened. So,
yeah, I want to make sure I'm clear. I'm not saying Don's off the hook, by the way, when I say he allocates funds. Like, at the end of the day, who knows how this is going to shape up? But
yeah,
you know, the people running the organization are ultimately responsible for what happens. So, you know, I think anyone that was in the decision-making process of this games is likely at risk when it all comes down. That's just from a corporate standpoint. I'm not saying they should be at risk. I'm just telling you they are. You know, just from
that's a fact. Like,
just from an experience standpoint, there's some risk there for them. So I'm not. My point is, I'm not trying to excuse Don even a little. Like, not even a little.
Well, you separate the man from the job.
Yeah.
Don, I met Don. I think he's a good man. I think he's a good person. I have no personal ill will towards him.
He's wrecked, dude. Every interview I've seen with him, he just looks distraught. So does Dave. Like, everyone on that team just, I mean, I have felt so bad for Don and Dave, and I don't know Dave at all really, but I know Don, and just to see the look on their faces, like, I don't know how you live with that. You know?
Yeah, I mean, these guys are human beings who have families of their own, and I guarantee you, this is something they got to carry with them for the rest of their lives. I mean, and I guess there's just like a lot more bad that's got to happen here before we can probably get on the other side. It's probably going to involve, like you said, people are at risk of losing jobs, and but let's figure out the facts. But you can see the job, like I said, separate the person from the job, and was the job that was done adequate enough to prevent this from happening? I think right now most people would say no.
Yeah, some will. I mean, like, if we're being as honest as we can, when it's all said and done, you're going to see people come and go through this, as you would expect in any kind of horrible situation. You're going to see massive changes in the business, and we're all going to have disagreements on what's the right course. And my hope is, at the end of the day, we all remember that a life was lost, and we all want the same thing. Literally every single person in this chat, I'm assuming, but you would imagine every person in the chat, anyone that's part of CrossFit, we all want the same thing. We want happy, healthy people. We want to be fit. We love this life-changing methodology. It saves lives. Like, we lost a life here, but this saves lives, and we all want that. And we're going to have to figure out, after the investigation is done, all the facts, come to light, how do we move forward as a community and lock arms and quit all this infighting, Yeah.
But again, I think a lot of that infighting is, like you just said, it's coming from the same place. Everybody wants the same thing.
Yeah.
And everybody, I'm assuming, who's a fan of this wants to see it survive and wants to see the sport get better and continue to give us something to cheer about and celebrate throughout the year. And I hope it does. I really do hope it does. I think we got a lot to go through before we get there, though.
Somebody told me today I wanted to burn down CrossFit. I literally laughed. I'm like, can you point to a specific example? Because I own an affiliate and I really don't want to lose that money. Like, it's a lot. I have a lot of money tied up in that thing, and I got 2 kids in college, so I really do not want it to burn down. So I'm just curious why you think, I'm out here trying to actively burn down my investment, which is really interesting to me, but it is what it is.
It is. Go ahead.
I will say this, Sean. I mentioned earlier, I appreciated getting to talk to you on the day that all this was going down. But I also think the community missed your voice. And that's not a critique of the people that were on the broadcast. Yeah. I think Chase and the others did a really, really nice job. But I do think people missed hearing the comfort of your voice. So I really appreciate you jumping on to do this, because I think people need to hear from you. And
that's my pleasure. And I thank you. I someone texted me, a friend of mine texted me, actually the guy I was talking to this morning, he goes, man, I bet you're glad you're not there now. And part of me, to be honest, part of me was like, you kind of am right now. But at the same time, there was a big part of me that wanted to be there to help. And someone earlier on, I think it was CrossFit, actually mentioned if I had checked on some of the crew. And I got a call that night from someone on the broadcast team who I've known for 12, 13 years, who was wrecked. And he was telling me that, certain people were distraught. The tape guys who had to go through and find this footage for the authorities, like they had to watch it over and over and over again. Like it had a real big effect on a lot of people. And I give Chase and Adrian and that whole crew so much credit for being able to go out there and do their jobs, because I don't know how you're supposed to navigate your way through that on the mic. I don't know what you're supposed to do, because you have people telling you, hey, we can talk about this, we can't talk about this. It's like, we got to make this feel like a competition. And how do you square that circle? So they were given really impossible circumstances, and I think they did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I told Nikki yesterday, I was incredibly disappointed that she wasn't part of that broadcast. And at the same time, I was incredibly happy that she was not a part of that broadcast.
Yeah.
Because I would not want her to have to deal with the emotional ramifications of walking away from that feeling of this constant, of just being so intimately involved in it.
Yeah. I can tell you, like, Tommy and Lauren, having been there on site, they came back really emotionally drained. And they were a mess.
Have you talked to Chase and Adrian, any of those guys?
I haven't talked. I've texted with them briefly. I was going to give them sort of just some time to kind of process. But yeah.
I meant to message Chase. I know he has no love lost for me, but I meant to message him, tell him how impressed I was, that I thought they did a really good job of holding it together and remaining professional in spite of unbelievable adversity and continuing to make it feel, I didn't feel like they were disrespectful, but they still kept it, the community and competition vibe that you want from the games. And it's such a terrible line to have to walk in a situation like that. And I thought they did a terrific job. They really did.
Yeah. And I know, like I said, I know they were being told stuff like, you can't say this, we're not going to address this. Yeah. And they had to, they had to adhere to that. And that's tough sometimes as a human being, because there's some things that you want to say up there that you're just not allowed to.
Plus they were in the tremendous shadow of Sean Woodland, which is really hard,
Nah, they did a great job.
Hey, that's true, dude. Again,
thank you.
Again, that has nothing to do with them. I mean, I thought they did a really good job, but bluntly, it was missed. You know when it was missed the most for me? This is a true story. I'm not sucking up to you, because I don't do that to you. But when I don't remember if it's the men or the women, but whoever clinched, and they're like, Tia Claire Toomey is the fittest woman on earth. And I'm like, why is that not Sean's voice? Because for me, that was always you. Every time someone was called fittest on earth, it was you doing it. And again, no disrespect to who called it. It was just, that's where you were missed the most for me. Like, you've become so iconic in that space that, I was like, man, I really missed it.
And Ryan Woods asked about it, if I was relieved not to be part of it. And like I said, there was a part of me that I was like, glad I'm not there right now. Right. And then there was also a very large part of me that wanted to be there just to try to help.
You're calling the Masters event though, right? You're doing that?
Yep.
Have they given you any changes being made early on? Do you know?
As far as programming and things like that?
Safety.
Or
just the overall feeling of what's going into it based on what's happened here.
I don't know. I haven't talked to Bob about that yet. I know that Bob and his crew, Bob Jennings and his crew, run a really good event. I've been to his Legends Championship competitions before. Bob is a former athlete himself, competing at the CrossFit Games as a master. So I think I know he has the athlete's best interest in mind. And I don't think there's going to be any sort of things that are done that would seem risky, or that would seem like, ooh, that's a little, should we be doing that right now?
Do you know if they're doing anything from a tribute standpoint?
That I do not know.
I was just curious, like, I hope, I meant to send some messages to people about this just to remind them to not forget this piece. Like the teenage athletes and the masters athletes are hurting from this as well. It's easy to discount them because they haven't competed yet, or to not think about them, not discount them, just you don't think about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a masters athlete message me, say, "Hey, do you think we can get some Lazar shirts to work out in while we're there?"
Yeah.
You know, and so I just wonder if CrossFit's thinking of some ways to, help the athletes recognize that CrossFit recognizes what a traumatic event this was, and that we want to continue to honor the legacy and help them honor Lazar as well. Not just put it on the athletes, I guess is the point.
I know. Look, obviously they're very aware of it. I spoke with Bob a little bit today via text, based just because he recommended a clothing store to go to, and I did. And that was really, hey, thanks for the recommendation. But I know that, and I got Lauren Khalil for the assist on this, that masters athletes will be getting an email soon who are competing there about safety and about things like that. Because obviously it's front of mind for everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that event. I think there are things that we have sort of on the map going forward that will help us hopefully get back to some sense of normalcy here and able to enjoy competition. The Masters competition is one of them. Looking forward to Wadapalooza SoCal. I think the Rogue Invitational is going to be in November. So there's some really cool things that are on the horizon, run by great organizations that I know have the best interest of the athletes in the sport top of mind, that hopefully will let us kind of get back into the flow of really remembering, like, okay, yeah, we can cheer for this. Because I don't know how it was for you, but there were times when I was watching the broadcast and I was with Fluffy Duck, Josh Pirtle and I were hanging out. There, for the most part, it was just a pretty somber kind of apathetic experience. But there were times where we started to kind of get into it and cheering, and then we were like, "Ooh, is that the right? Yeah. Should we be doing that?" And I think if we just if we can get into these other competitions and appreciate that, and again, not forget what happened, but remember Lazar and remember why this sport is so special, that hopefully we can start to make our way out of this. And there are some things on the calendar that I think will help us do that.
I was talking to my kid about that tonight. She, when all this went down, she was out of town. I told you she was in Montana and working, and she had told her friends, my side hustle. Right. Mm-hmm. And one of the master, when all this went down, they're like, is your dad making memes about this? And she's like, no, absolutely not. Because she knows me. Right. Mm-hmm. But when she came home, she's like, did you have some memes? I'm like, oh yeah, I got dozens. Like the dark humor in me has dozens, and not making fun of Lazar. Like I just have dozens of jokes that I know wouldn't fly right now. Mm-hmm. Right. My point to telling that story is to say, we need to get back to a point where we can start laughing and cheering again. Mm-hmm. To honor Lazar. Like I didn't know him, but he seemed like a really funny and engaging, and he laughed a lot and was always smiling, and was a fierce competitor. And we do have to find a way to get back to that, where we can feel okay to cheer for people again, mm-hmm. And to laugh at jokes and to live our lives. And I think that honors him.
I do too.
And I hope we get there. I really do, like soon, very soon. Mm-hmm. And, but without forgetting, because I don't want us to forget what's happened here. And certainly we should, remember his memory for a long time, forever. But, I would like to see us get back to that. Now, I also understand why it'd be so somber with Josh, though, because he's not much fun. Like, he's not funny.
Just a wet blanket of a human being. My God, he sat on my couch on his computer, just, drinking all my liquid death, and which actually he sent to me, but eating all my food, come on.
I've known Josh since I got in the space. To his credit, he was one of the first other pages that reached out to me and became friends. And when you guys did that meme or that reel over the weekend where he was like, "Oh, I miss Sean Woodland's voice," and you were like shouting in his face. Yeah. I got to tell you, dude, like I normally don't give Josh credit. It was like, that was a perfect moment, perfect time.
Yeah, he was sitting there. He goes, "Hey, man, you want to make some content?" I'm like, "All right, what do you have in mind?" And we kind of just like idea tennised back and forth. So, yeah, my wife came in, she's like, "Were you yelling?"
Yeah, it was, everyone needed it. I can't tell you how many people said, I needed that laugh. Mm-hmm. And that's my point. Is why I think we've got to get back to laughter and back to enjoying each other's company. And it's okay if we're all fighting about stuff, but I do think we all have to recognize that we love each other more than we hate each other. And if we can figure that out, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And that's where the best decisions are going to be made, right? Yeah. That's when people are going to be more willing to find common ground. But right now I get it. Everyone's pissed and I'm one of them. Like I'm just, and it's been simmering for a while. And like I said, this thing just, catapulted me over the edge. I'm just like, no more.
Yeah, we all are, Sean. Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't think there's a person alive that isn't, you could call it whatever you want, disappointment, pissed off, mad, angry, distraught, whatever. You give whatever adjective you want to it. But, at the end of the day, we got to figure out how to fix it and move on from it. And so I hope we get there sooner than later, for sure.
Likewise.
I don't know what that time frame is. That's the only thing I would caution people on. When Don gave his statement, he goes, "Hey, we're going to be as transparent as possible." I'm like, "Oh, bro, don't do this to me again." Like, you need to tell people, like, this is where CrossFit drives me crazy. I wish he would come out and go, "All right, guys, it's going to be 90 days." Or give a better time frame than, "Hey, we're going to be as transparent as we can." Because now everybody's like, "Well, how long is it going to be? 2 weeks, a week, whatever." Like,
because I don't know about you, but I've been anticipating something for like the last couple of days. Like I thought there'd be more coming out now than there.
You ain't getting shit for 60 days at a minimum, dude.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
It's going to be longer than that. I mean, I know Joe and his team are doing Freedom of Information Act, and they're getting the police report and the dive team report and the coroner and everything else. Yeah, everyone is. But all of that stuff takes time. It isn't, it's not going to be done in a week. It's going to take months. And then you got to sort through it and, all the other stuff that comes from it. So,
yeah,
it takes a while. Amy's sitting at Amy's like,
I was like, it's late.
This is like early for Sean because he's in fucking California.
It's not even 8 p.m. yet.
I know, it's early for you. This is like everyone in Ohio is in bed right now. For the record, this is Sean's fault, not mine. I did not pick this time.
Sorry, I had a day. I had a busy day. So.
Well, you got a wife and kids, and
next time we'll take it on your time. I feel like there should be a next time. I feel like we should do this again.
We need to do it a lot. We've discussed, for anyone watching, we've discussed kind of a regular, what we're calling it, Grumpy Old Men.
Grumpy Old Men, yeah.
Grumpy Old Men podcast. I'd be fine with that. I like just talking about whatever the hell is going on and hearing from people. As long as we can do it live. I think we'd have to do it live like this because I want people throwing comments in to keep it honest. Yeah. I'll be honest, like I don't do a lot of live shows because I prefer to make sure the audio sounds really good and over edit. But I've done lives now. This is 2 in the same week. And I'm starting to see why people do it because the chat keeps you honest.
Yeah, more or less. Sometimes you get some people in there like our buddy Will T earlier. You're like,
like Sean and Tom, like Lauren and Tommy. They just come in and say crazy shit.
I know that probably was Lauren.
Yeah, maybe their burner account. I don't know. Well, I mean, look, there's always going to be somebody comes in and says some crazy shit. 10% of the general public is just batshit crazy, but the reality is it's nice to hear other people's opinions.
No, for sure. And a lot of times there's some great questions. Like I do appreciate that.
Right.
Is that Bean?
Yeah, that's you can hear him. Yeah, Bean. He's anytime I'm on a Zoom call or laptop or whatever, he likes to come in and talk. He's an asshole. Yeah. Typical cat behavior. So anyway, well, this is fun, dude. I'm glad we did it.
I always appreciate hanging out with you.
Look, it's been the whole point of this for anyone who cares. I'll just say it out loud. For me is, having an opportunity to talk to friends and hear from others and have some community involvement to get us past this. We're not going to solve the problems, but I think the sooner we start talking about them and connect with each other is how we fix it for us inside. Whether CrossFit fixes or not, it's on them. But I think the group of, all of us as a community, we have to come together and talk to each other. And, I've been in arguments in the last couple of days with people online, and then all of a sudden we're agreeing on stuff. I'm like, oh shit, I wish I hadn't been mad earlier because now I feel bad because I kind of like this person, And I think we need to do more of this.
Yes.
Just talk.
People aren't who they are online face to face.
Yeah.
Things change very quickly when you get into a one-on-one conversation. You can see each other.
Yeah. Oh, I am. I'm kind of a dick in both cases, but I get your point. That's good.
Will you be? I see that comment. Rams going sub 500.
Are they?
No, they're not going sub 500.
Are they not? I don't know. I don't know. Are the Rams going to be good this year?
I think they're going to be pretty good, John.
Are they?
They got a couple years left in this window, and then they got to rebuild.
We don't know how the Browns are going to be. Like, we're eternal pessimists.
Man. They're going to be good. Lions, Browns, Super Bowl. That's what I think this world needs.
All right. First of all, we are eternal pessimists here in Cleveland around the Browns because we've certainly had years where we thought they were going to be great and they weren't. I know the team's good. We have one huge flaw that we're not sure is going to be good or bad. So, and unfortunately, it's the best position on the team. So we'll see what happens. But
anybody but the San Francisco 49ers. That's all I got to say.
Hey, I'll let you complain about other teams all you want.
Right, thank you.
But I'm with you on that. So we'll see. All right, dude. Well, good talk. Make sure you tell your wife I said hi.
I will. She's a big fan.
Yeah, hug that. Yeah, she messaged me this week.
I know. She told me that with the text conversation that I was having with her.
Yeah, because we were having our date night tonight. And
yeah, exactly.
It makes me laugh every time. This one of my favorite parts of this community and getting to know people like yourself and Nikki and others is getting to know their spouses. That, you know what I mean? Like getting to know Matt, Nikki's husband, has been one of my favorite things. Yeah. It's just really fun to me to figure out what people have to deal with when they're not talking to me. It's always good. So, All right, dude. Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining. I know everyone in the chat's thankful too. Everyone loves hearing your voice. So thanks for having me. This moment. And for everyone joining the chat, thanks guys. Appreciate you guys joining, and we'll do this again soon. See you guys later. Jesus Christ.